Welcome, everyone, to Drunk Bible Study Bonus Edition, where we are talking about Jeremiah 28 through 30. Wow. I mean, everyone's in Babylon.
Wow. Yeah.
Everyone's in Babylon, right? And Jeremiah is kind of like oscillating between worlds. He's just he left the building in what you said was an entire paragraph unto itself in Eugene's
right. When
epic story.
Hananiah broke his yoke, he was just like, I'm out. I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'm out. Peace. Bye. Yeah. So in the chapter that I read, which was 29, they were talking about the king of Babylon roasting two false prophets not on a spit.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say on a spit,
Right.
but it's not really on a spit.
Could have been on a spit. We don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, it doesn't really say. And the things that I looked up didn't say that was the case or not. But essentially, they were cast into the fire so that Ahab and Zedekiah, who were two prophets, but who were false prophets, they were cast into the fire. And the reasoning behind that was that they were false prophets. They were prophesying about God and about things that were going to happen to the peoples. But it was false, and they also committed adultery, and they did bad things. They were unfaithful, and God was a witness to all of that, and he held them to account, essentially. So that was a bad thing that they did. Also, I found...
Interesting.
Yeah, I found this thing on desiringgod.org.
Oh, boy.
Good.
Yikes.
It's a good URL. Yeah.
Yeah, Desiring God. And the article is, why was Zedekiah roasted in the fire? And essentially, yeah, what I found from this, it was a pretty downbeat, unhappy article, but essentially saying that physical horrors respond to or correspond rather to spiritual horrors, and that God knows that we do not feel horrible about the spiritual horror of our sin.
What? Okay.
But that is why physical horrors are out there and happen if you do bad things like hell.
Okay. Wow, Emily.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Really, you find some
You do
stuff.
find the most interesting Christian blogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's correlating the two in order to make plain to us how horrible sin is. Belittling God feels like a light thing to us. Being burned feels huge. I'm like, okay, yeah,
Okay,
I guess.
yeah.
Sure.
Weird.
Yeah, so essentially it's kind of I don't know, not a metaphor. It's not even a metaphor. It happened, I guess. Yes, the Babylonian king cast these people into the fire, and it's essentially, a thing for all of you out there to look at and know, don't do these things. Don't do these adulterous, bad, profiteering, bad things, or else you too will be fire boys and girls.
So it just sounds like a kind of a Christian apologetic justification for why such horrible, violent things might happen in the Bible.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
totally.
So that sounds like to me.
Same old, same old.
But these two people did die. Yeah, these two people were definitely burned alive, and it was pretty awful. So
Right. Here's the thing I wonder, though, is that Jeremiah is because they're false prophets, right? But then it also mentions that they were adulterers. I'm like, was that actually maybe why they were burned, and it just conveniently worked out?
Yeah, what is that? Lust is like a 7 deadly sin. Is that even a thing? Is the 7 deadly sin?
It's not a thing yet.
Okay,
No.
it's not a thing.
No,
yeah.
It's not a thing in the Bible, really.
Yeah, I think that is a thing Catholics came up with.
Oh, fun.
After all this.
Fun.
Or maybe it's part of the Apocrypha that's in the Catholic Bible, but not the Protestant and Jewish Bibles. I'm not quite sure, actually.
Yeah.
No, it's not from the Bible. This is an early Catholic Church kind of thing.
Cool.
Well, yeah, this also says that it basically justifies hell as well. It's like hell will be physical, not just spiritual. So even though the greatest outrages are not physical.
Yes, but you're reading that. Yeah. But you're okay. I mean, I sort of honestly, Emily, I'm sorry. I tune out a little bit every time you read one of those sites just because I'm like, I've heard these sorts of somewhat nonsensical arguments so many times that I just kind of tune them out.
Well, I haven't.
Maybe Emily has a good point that some of the show is not just about teaching Emily about the Bible, but some of it has been about teaching Emily about Christian culture.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And
yeah.
So,
yeah. The interpretations and
as gross as it is for me and Jace to hear, because we're just like, oh yeah, I got it.
I
guess it is new to Emily.
Yeah, that is a good thing to keep in mind. You're right.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, anyways, those guys were super roasted. Yeah.
Gosh.
Roasted boys.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. So I'm talking about people coming back from the dead. We had this line
kind of the opposite.
In Jeremiah 30, verse 9. Instead, they will serve the Lord their God and David their king, whom I will raise up for them. And the question came up of like literally David back from the dead, come back to her? Could it be?
Yeah.
Amazing. And I do think that would be amazing. It is a little bit hard to get to the bottom of this. I went to our favorite hermeneutics Stack Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I spent some time there today too.
And someone was posting about it seems pretty clear the way that this is listed that it's David, not the line of David, not the family of David, not a descendant of David. It's David. What do people think about that? And most people are like, no, it's pretty common in Hebrew to use the name of an ancestor to mean their lineage. And of course,
I guess we've done that a lot with Jacob.
We have. And of course, every other Christian blog on the internet is like, it's Jesus. That's what he means. It's Jesus.
Oh, that's Jesus. It's Jesus.
Wait, who's Jesus?
But anytime we're referring to David or the lineage of David, it's pointing to Jesus. That's the typical evangelical Christian take
of Jesse's line / David's line, the crown. Yes.
Got it. Okay. I see. Huh.
Now, however, that did remind me of the story of Constantine Palaiologos, that old chestnut.
Oh, right.
That we all know and love.
This Greek guy.
Who?
A Greek king, not just a guy, not just a random Greek guy.
King. Okay.
Yeah, I learned about this whole story when I was spending time in both Greece and Turkey consecutively, not simultaneously.
Do you have one? How did you manage this? Okay.
Yeah.
No, so this is Constantine the 12th,
Whoa.
Who was the last Byzantine emperor.
Okay.
The very last one.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're talking about, so he reigned from 1449 until the fall of Constantinople, not Istanbul, in 1453. And so that's where the whole story comes from. And I learned more about the story when I visited the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, which, by the way, if you ever have a chance to go in your lifetime, go. It's just so amazing. There's also some very interesting ancient waterways close to there, which I love.
You do love waterways, yes.
I love
you like them waterways.
Ancient waterways and ancient water systems. They're just all up in this area. But yeah, so basically, long story short, the Ottomans were like, we're taking Constantinople, not Istanbul. We're going to take it. It's going to be ours. And Constantine Palaiologos, he was the regent of the area at the time. And he was like, nah, you're not going to do that. I'm going to make a stand. And unfortunately, did not make a stand successfully. The Ottomans successfully captured Constantinople and the Hagia Sophia. And arguably, they've kind of still been there to this day, because now we have modern day Turkey. But there was a legend that came about that basically... Oh no, actually he didn't die. He was rescued by some angels. And
angels?
Those angels turned him into a marble statue. And then those angels took the marble statue and hid it in a secret cave underneath the gate of Constantinople. And basically someday he's going to wake up.
Whoa.
And he's going to take Constantinople back.
Whoa.
Cool.
We don't know when that day may come,
but
that it's coming.
Why has no one made a super cool action movie out of this?
I'll bet you somebody has. I'll bet you somewhere there has. And so supposedly the Turks did wall up the gate, and supposedly the story is that they're just in case.
Wow.
Keep that just in statue case. Inside there.
Just in case, let's just wall this up.
Wow.
Just to cover our asses a little bit.
Cool.
But yeah, supposedly someday he's going to come bursting out. And also an interesting line that I read in the Wikipedia is that according to the legend, his resurrection is going to be heralded by the bellowing of a great ox. So be on the lookout for that. If you're in Istanbul, not Constantinople, and you hear a great ox, be on the lookout because Constantine the 12th is going to come bursting out any second now and take that city back.
Yeah, put on whatever like Greek-looking things you have and kind of try to be one of his people.
Right, try to blend in.
When you say Constantine, I keep thinking of Keanu Reeves, so it's...
Oh, please don't.
Okay.
I love thinking about Keanu Reeves. What is your problem right now?
Yeah, what's wrong with Keanu Reeves?
Sorry.
Dedeker?
I'm so sorry. I spoke a little too soon. Think about Keanu Reeves as much as you like. No one here is going to stop you from thinking about Keanu Reeves. Just don't think about that terrible movie called Constantine.
Oh,
I actually never saw it.
Me neither. I just know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just know of him. But apparently Dedeker's seen it and hates
anyway, just
awkward.
Maybe we'll do a movie night.
Have we put him in this thing yet?
Keanu?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we have. Hold on a second.
I'm sure he's on our list. I don't know if we've actually...
Yeah, we cast him as Abner. Little Abner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lil Abner?
Lil Abner.
Oh, okay. Keanu. Wow.
Okay, that's what I got.
Okay.
Yep. Gosh.
Cool.
Okay, so I spent some time looking up the Babylonian captivity. This whole 70 years thing, right? That keeps getting reiterated. It's not going to be 2.
It'll be 70.
It's going to be 70. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's kind of what I found. So the kind of thing that started all of this is that King Nebuchadnezzar started being, a badass, and that he demanded tribute of all of these kingdoms nearby, and Jehoiakim wouldn't pay it. And we did read this a little while ago, where Jehoiakim refused to pay tribute to Nebuchadnezzar. He I forget what it was in the Bible story that we read, but it was kind of him kind of giving a little jibby jab back and being like, no way, man, you're not cool.
No way. Okay.
And so then they sieged Jerusalem again, and Jehoiakim died in that. And then his son, Jeconiah, became the king. But then still, they ended up at war and stuff, and eventually ended up confiscating a bunch of people and taking them all to Babylon. Now, what was interesting to me was not the research I found on the biblical accounts, but about the non-biblical accounts. That's kind of what I was looking for, because remember, we've talked about the exile or the escape from Egypt is one of those things that's very contested because there's no other historical evidence to back it up.
Oh.
It's very much this no one else corroborates this story except for the Hebrew Bible with the escape from Egypt specifically. But in this case, there actually is a lot of other evidence here about them being captured and taken to Babylon. And specifically, one of these I thought was interesting was that there are tablets that have been discovered that are spelling out the amounts of rations that are supposed to be given to King Jeconiah from Judah and his 5 royal princes.
Whoa. Fascinating.
And they refer to them by different names. They call him Yahukinu, king of the land of Yahudu, but Yahudu, Yehuda, Jerusalem, right? It's all kind of the Babylonianization of their names.
Babylonianization, cool.
Yeah. And then also there's archaeological evidence of the fact that the Babylonian forces just messed some stuff up in Judah when they were there, destroying settlements, things like that. And you can, there's clay scraps and stuff that have writing and stuff that confirms this. And so it's very much yes, around 587-ish BCE, kind of in that range, kind of the range that we're talking about right now in Jeremiah. There's evidence that yes, Judah was absolutely attacked. Jerusalem specifically was destroyed as a city. No one lived there anymore, which is a little bit confusing about how Jeremiah sent a letter from there.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it just meant nearby.
He was in the neighborhood.
Not all of Judah was destroyed. But Jerusalem, the city itself, was destroyed and laid in ruins for 150 years.
Wow.
And that's been fairly well corroborated as far as I can tell here. What's interesting is that they also estimated with a high degree of confidence that the population of Judah before being attacked by Babylon was around 75,000 people. And that the number of people that were taken to Babylon varies, but the highest numbers of what that estimate was is 20,000.
Okay.
So this means that likely only like a quarter or so of the population of Judah was taken to Babylon, and the rest stayed in Judah.
Interesting.
Wow.
And just or other cities. And there's, archaeological evidence of other cities and things like that. So now the 70 years bit, that around-ish 70 years later is when Cyrus the Great does start taking over. And when he took over, like we talked about, this was a few months ago now, but when he took over, he allowed the peoples that he took over to kind of go back to their homelands and reestablish their cults, as they were considered, right? Of like to practice their own religions and things like that. That was kind of what made Cyrus so great.
Cyrus the Great.
What's interesting, though, is that scholars do point out the fact that these texts about kind of repatriating people back to their lands actually doesn't mention Judah or Jerusalem at all. But that is in keeping with what he did. So there's probably a decent chance that they were also part of that. But that this move back didn't happen all at once and instead was over many years of these people sort of gradually ending up back there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And that a lot of the Jews in other parts of the world, like in like Arabia and stuff like that, kind of came from being taken to Babylon first and then exiling out of Babylon to other places in the world. So that's kind of where some of these other groups of Jews around the world, who have now, a lot of them have converged back in Israel,
right?
In modern day, like their lineages or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
And then the one other thing I found, there was a mention of some stories that take place during the Babylonian exile that are, quote, non-biblical. And a few of these are, according to some people, from the Bible, and that's because they're part of the Apocrypha.
Huh.
And one of these that I thought was fun is the story of Susanna. Oh, Susanna, oh, don't you cry for me. And she's included in the Catholic Bible as well as the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Oh, cool.
But Protestants consider it apocryphal, and she's not included in the Jewish Tanakh. But she's supposed to be part of the Book of Daniel, which we haven't gotten to yet. But she's not in it. So
she's an Old Testament lady.
She's an Old Testament lady.
Okay.
And supposedly her story takes place during this time. So that's kind of why she's a little bit relevant. But I just thought it was an interesting story because it's so different from a lot of the other stories we've gotten.
Yeah.
So here's the story. She's a Hebrew wife named Susanna. And there's these two elders who both were separately spying on her bathing in her yard or whatever. And they're both lusting after her, and they bump into each other and like, oh, you were
looking at her? You were looking at her?
Yeah, exactly. So the two of them make their way to her house and accost her, demanding to have sex with her. And she refuses. And so they have her arrested, claiming that the reason she was out there naked in the yard is because she was having sex with some young man who was not her husband. But Susanna refuses to be blackmailed. And instead it's like, no, it wasn't me. I'm not going to admit to anything. You guys are jerks. And she's about to be put to death when our hero Daniel, who we will meet much more later, interrupts the proceedings and is like, hang on a minute. Before we put this woman to death, what if we separated these two men and had them both give their accounts of the story?
Classic.
Which is like classic, right? Like classic
prophet boy.
Put the two criminals in a different room and see if their stories line up. And when they described the tree that she met her young lover under, they both described different trees.
Yeah.
And apparently in the Greek that this is written down in, because there's no Hebrew records of this story, it's only in Greek translations later on, which is part of why it's considered apocrypha by some. Apparently there's some kind of like puns involved in the names of the trees, but that he kind of sets them up being like, one tree is like a very big tree, and he's like, oh yeah, you'll just chop that down. Or I'm sorry, it's a small tree. He's like, oh, you'll chop that down, right? And then the other one's like a big tree. He's like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to saw that because it's such a big tree. And then he kind of uses that to point out the fact that their story was false because these were such different things. And the 2 men were put to death, and the woman was set free.
Good for her.
So,
good.
It was like a happy ending for once.
You know what? Good.
Yeah, seriously.
For freaking once.
Goodness. Good. That's encouraging.
So I just wanted to leave you all with that. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. Wow. Well, as always, we're learning things here on Drunk Bible Study. We hope that you are learning a little bit of something as well, because this Bible is pretty challenging at times, especially in the midst of reading it, to like fully comprehend. I think even for the two of you, you're like, wait a minute, what?
Yes,
what does that mean? What is that saying? So yeah, it's good to go back and have these moments of being able to look stuff up, and we hope you enjoy them. So we will see you next week. We can't wait to continue with Jeremiah.